Well, 20 minutes before 8. Thank you so much for choosing Morning Live. The UNHCR, which is the United Nations Refugee Agency, say that World Refugee Day, which is tomorrow, will take place this year in a very special context, as you can imagine, due to the COVID-19 crisis. Now, the pandemic has been affecting everyone everywhere. And it has also been an opportunity to highlight, though, the importance of solidarity worldwide and positive actions by all people, including refugees and asylum seekers, as well as host communities and ordinary citizens. And the UNHCR is appealing to countries worldwide to do far more to find homes for millions of refugees and other displaced people, and also just try and seriously distribute whatever is available to them as well. And the forced displacement is now affecting more than 1% of humanity. That means 1 in every 97 people, and with fewer and fewer of those who flee being able to return home being the reality that we are faced with. Joining us now to discuss this matter is the Regional Director for Africa of the UNHCR, Valentin Tapsoba. Thank you so much for your time. Welcome to Morning Live.
Thank you so much, Lian, for having me.
Mr. Tapsoba, so what are the biggest challenges right now for refugees, both here in South Africa and elsewhere, especially against this backdrop of a COVID-19 pandemic?
Yes, thank you so much. Maybe if you allow me, I would just like to recall to those who are listening or are watching that the meaning of World Refugee Day is an international day designated by the United Nations to honor refugees around the globe. It falls each year on June 20th and celebrates the strength and courage of people who have been forced to flee their homes, countries, to escape conflict or persecution. World Refugee Day is an occasion to build empathy and understanding for their plight and to recognize their resilience in rebuilding their lives. Right now, like you rightly pointed out, we have 79.5 million refugees or people of concern, meaning refugees, the internally displaced people, the statelessness. Now, with the COVID, everybody has been locked down. We don't have a movement, and you can imagine those who were able to have livelihood, to go and work and get something to bring food on the table are no longer able to do so. But one thing that we are very happy is, like the High Commissioner, Mr. Filippo Grandi, the motto is to stay and deliver. Staying and delivering meaning what? Meaning that despite of the COVID pandemic, UNHCR staff members, UNHCR implementing partners, we have decided that we cannot leave the refugees. We cannot pack and go and leaving the refugees behind. And what we are doing is to make sure that we stay and deliver with making also taking the necessary measures to make sure that the spread of the COVID is really minimized. But right now, people, even before the COVID, it was very, very difficult for them to make ends meet. And now, with the COVID, many people have been threatened to be evicted from their houses, and also food is a big issue for the Southern Africa region. But we are still trying also with WFP, the World Food Program, to make sure, for example, before the lockdown, to distribute food, for example, for 2 months, if we have the quantity in warehouses and so forth, so that the social distancing also will be when people take their food, they can go home, and then they could make sure that they have something to eat for the next 2 months, and then we will see what next.
Now, just talking to forced displacement, let's address first the simple numbers that we are talking about. What are the latest refugee statistics, both in South Africa, and worldwide, Mr. Tapsoba?
Worldwide, we have now 79.5 million people of concern to UNHCR. Like I said, this, if you have the breakdown, you will have the refugees, you will have the internally displaced people, and you will have also statelessness people who are looking for citizenship. Now, in the Southern Africa region, we have 9 million people who are in need of protection, international protection. And then when you take Africa itself, we have 33.5 million people who are in need of international protection.
And if we look at, further statistics, it really is mind-boggling, but it paints a very stark picture of what the world is dealing with. We're talking about 100 million people, if I'm correct, at least, who were forced to flee their homes in the past decade, Mr. Tapsoba, and therefore seeking a refuge either outside their own countries or on different continents. But that's more people fleeing than the entire population of Egypt, which is the world's 14th most populous country. So what is going wrong? What is happening? What are the factors that are driving all of this?
Yes, you are absolutely right. We had doubled the population of refugees. If you see, for example, in 2000, we had more or less 41 million refugees. And today, we have almost 80 million refugees. This is the double within a decade. Now, when you take what happened, you take, for example, South Sudan, you take DRC, you take Venezuela, and you take Syria, and you take Yemen. This is the producing countries mainly. This is why we have been able to increase, to double the population. Now, the root causes, as you may remember, Leon, the African Union decided that this year, the theme of this year is silencing the guns. So the root causes is, for example, when you take the situation in DRC next door, we have more than 5 million IDPs, internally displaced people, and we have more than 500,000 refugees, meaning those like South Sudanese, like people from refugees from CAR, refugees from Rwanda, refugees from Burundi. And then outside now, you have also more than 1 million refugees from DRC. Meaning that you have DRC refugees in Zambia, you have them in Tanzania, in Uganda, and so forth. It is spreading. But let's hope that the theme of the year, silencing the gun, tackling the root causes, people will be able to go back home and rebuild their life. The minimum, the average time that refugees are spending outside of their own country could be 17 years. When a refugee leaves his country of origin and going to a country of asylum, it takes minimum 17 years for him or for her to come up with a durable solution. Durable solution meaning that either the refugee get resettled to Europe, to the US, to Canada, or to a third world country, or having a local integration. For example, somebody who is in DRC has been here for the last 17 years or 20 years in South Africa and decides that here is now his home, his or her home, or somebody who would like to go back to his country of origin. It takes the average 17 years to do so.
Mr. Tapsoba, 80% of the world's displaced people are in countries or territories that are affected by acute food insecurity and malnutrition. And many of those countries also facing climate and other disaster risk. So what is the key focus then for the UNHCR locally, that would be in South Africa and Africa at this time?
Yes, we have, like you rightly pointed out, 80% of the World Refugee or the world people of concern to UNHCR lives in developing countries, either in developing countries or middle-income countries. And when we have a situation like that, you cannot just be in a camp for many years. We needed to make sure that they are not just going to be there and waiting for food distribution, food parcel, international assistance. When they were in their home countries, they used to farm, to have their own jobs and so forth, and make meaningful income for themselves and for their family members. What we are now trying to do is to make sure that livelihood activities are going to be given to them so that they could at least farm. They can do farming, they can do entrepreneurship jobs like sewing machines, or they could also go and do some trade and so forth, so that when they don't get 100% of the food parcel that WFP World Food Program is trying to give to them, they will not go to negative coping mechanism. Meaning, for example, if they were getting 100% food ration, and because of the funding situation, WFP doesn't have enough funding to buy food for them, how are they going to do? We are going to start targeting. Not everybody will get the food, or they will get the food, but it will be at a reduced rate, meaning, for example, 50% food distribution or 60% depending on the funding situation. So not making sure that the refugees don't go, for example, survival sex or something like that. We need to make sure that the international community can come and assist, so that we can give them some cash or teach them to do some livelihood activities, so that they could supplement what WFP is giving them. And this, if you allow me, is also linked to the Global Compact on Refugees that the General Assembly, the United Nations General Assembly, has requested the High Commissioner to come up with a roadmap, a clear roadmap on how we are going to tackle because the numbers of refugees are not going down, are not decreasing, but increasing. So we cannot just sit and watch, and we need the involvement of the international community. And this is why we came up with the Global Compact on Refugees. And in that, you have the donor countries, you have the private sector, you have also the civil society, you have the refugees themselves, and you have the host community, everybody coming and trying to tackle and see how we can really make sure that the refugees are well protected internationally.
So, given that we are now dealing with this pandemic that is COVID-19, and the world is rightly preoccupied with that, would it be correct to assume that refugees may be more likely to become infected with COVID-19, given some of the living conditions that they are facing in the host countries where they are currently?
No, you are just hitting the nail on the head. Definitely, even prior to COVID, refugees are among the poorest, are among the vulnerable human beings when they move from their home country seeking asylum. And with the COVID, it is clear that the challenges has been multiplied. and people are really suffering. But what we have been doing is to make sure that information campaign, awareness on how they can really stay safe, they washing the hands, and in order to do so, we have been able to put, for example, water points, because when you are asking a refugee to wash the hand, and if he or she doesn't have water, what is he or she going to do? This is one. Second thing, we are making sure that they get the soap. We are making sure that, for example, we have leaders, refugee leaders in the camps or in the settlement and so forth that are really going ahead with the information. We have also the radios, messaging and so forth, so that everybody could be in a position to do so. And also refugees who are like nurses or doctors, they are with the front liners, with the government official, the nurses and so forth, the doctors, frontliners, fighting and making sure that everything is fine so that the disease, the virus will not be spread out. But it is not easy. It is very difficult. But like I said, we have to stay and deliver.
And Mr. Tapsoba, we realize that obviously, speaking to the numbers that you mentioned earlier, the world would obviously need more host countries. So please talk to us about also the ordinary people in these host countries. What can they do? Because it's one thing, governments, there are rules, there are regulations, there are laws that they need to abide by. But how can ordinary people assist with this plight?
Yes, again, here I would like to take the opportunity of from your invitation really to congratulate and thank very much the asylum countries that have opened their heart, their doors, their borders, and also the host community to receive the refugees. Because as you know, if you have a breakdown in the country and people are fleeing, when they cross the border, it is not, UNHCR is not there, or the international communities or the NGOs to receive them. Those who are going to welcome them are the host communities. And then they have been doing that for many decades. And we are very grateful that they are really, the solidarity is there, the Ubuntu from Africa to receive their brothers and sisters. This is one thing. The second element is that we as UNHCR, when we get to the place where refugees are, we don't discriminate. Meaning what? Meaning that we will not look at the status. We will not, but in order to have the coexistence, a good coexistence between the host community and the refugees, whatever we have also to share with the refugees, to share with the host communities. If we, for example, build a school, we are not going to be saying that the school is exclusively for refugees, but the host community, the villages and so forth, if they have children and so forth, they could also attend the schooling. If we have a borehole with clean water and so forth, the host community could also benefit from that. If there is a medical center and so forth, they could also come and be treated there. So that we make sure that there is no fighting between, because they have already fled their own country because of fighting, because of discrimination. They cannot come to a safe haven, to an asylum country, and start fighting again with the nationals or the host communities. So this is making sure that peace will prevail where they are, and when conditions are met, they can go back to their home country.
Well, thank you so much for your time this morning. Regional Director Africa of the UNHCR, Valentin Tapsoba, talking to us about a UN World Refugee Day, which takes place tomorrow, that Saturday, the 20th of June. And it really does make for some stark reading when you look at what the situation actually is. 5 countries, from where the 2/3 of the people displaced across borders actually derive from. You're looking at countries like Syria, Syria, Venezuela, Afghanistan, South Sudan and Myanmar. And these are the realities that we are faced with over and above, of course, COVID-19 and that pandemic that's gripping the world. Right, with that, it's 8 o'clock.